That's a good word, Bart. I feel somebody really needs to receive that tonight. I really do. I mean, that's huge. I had the privilege of watching the revival DVDs of John. He spoke some really powerful things over this church this time. I mean, not that he doesn't every time, but I mean, it was just amazing how much that my spirit was lining up with what he was talking about. And I'm sure that many of you did the same thing with it. And I was actually in Disney World, whenever the revival was here. I wanted to be here, but I'd always planned on him being in that same date. And it's my understanding that got mixed up this time with the part of the trip that we went to Panama City and his schedule. So therefore, I had to miss it. But I told Darlene, I said, well, I'm definitely going to get the DVDs because I want to be a part of it. And even when we went to Panama City, I got to watch Joel's message. And that was good too. I mean, God has really just been speaking to this church a lot, not just through Randy, but through other people. And not only is he speaking through other people here, but through the conferences that I've been to. I had the privilege of going to the International Conference with Sammy back in June. And then I just got back with Randy and several other people here. Went down to the Southeast District Conference. And they really shared a lot of stuff down there that I would love to just tell you about. What exactly is Scott Reese's title? Okay, district supervisor, is that? Okay, well, supervisor. Anyway, the man has the power and authority to speak into our lives, I'll say it that way. And he shared a lot of stuff, and if you would like to read it, I've got it here, and I'll be more than happy to share it with you. I'd love to share it with you openly, but it'd be very time-consuming. But there were several different people that spoke, and the conference was on greater things. And different people spoke. Restoration Church, Pastor Huey, who Randy and several others ordained this weekend or that weekend. We had Ben Ige. He's another pastor called Ephesus Church. They're out of the Carolinas. I think he says about 10 minutes from Charlotte or so. And it was real good what he said. He said, great things will happen in your ministry when you go. So pretty much even though you've got a ministry and you're going to do great things in it, that there's going to be greater things when you go away from it. Another lady that spoke that I'm going to talk a little bit about too is Sandy Flanagan. And if you haven't had a chance to hear her, I encourage you to go hear her whenever you can. She's out of Nashville. I think she spoke with the women not too long ago at the women's conference. But she pretty much was talking about the greater things come from great storms. And I'll go through that with you here in just a little bit. But it's really good. And like I said, I've got here also what, the benefits to come of what Scott Reese said. But pretty much he said the anointing of a favor is going to be on this body, this as of now and this coming year. So that's really huge. But he touched on several different points. But like I said, I've got it here, but I can't share it with you because of time. But I do want to go ahead and get into the lesson with you. I'm going to be speaking a little bit also while I'm giving people props on stuff. The Commands of Christ. This is actually Series 4. This is the lessons that Tim has given over in the fellowship hall on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock. And I'm going to say this the best way I can. I do brag on Tim a lot, but it's easier for me to brag on Tim when it's actually good. So I will tell you that I've been to a lot of these, and I will brag on Tim. I think he's been doing a great job with it, and I encourage you to come. So enough of that public announcement. Let's move on to the actual word tonight. Yeah. I want to... What? Oh. That's good. All right, what I want to share with you is I want to share with you John 14:27. So if you'll stand with that reading of the word, and I'm going to share, as I do, several other scriptures, so this is the only one I want you to stand on. John 14:27. It says, peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. You may be seated. So that talks about peace, and peace is trying not to give too much away here. Peace is something that's very important. It's something that we've got to have in our lives. It's very hard to be focused on things and think that God is in control if you don't have any peace in your life. And I'm sure you've all witnessed that at one time or another. So, point one, I just had to do this. I'm going to talk about the dogs again. But this is the third dog. This is the peace dog. So you got the good dog, the bad dog, and the peace dog. And I think that's the only one that Randy's covered. So this should be the last of the dogs, unless he comes up with another one I'm not aware of. But pretty much, with the peace dog, you think about it. He's talking about where he's sitting there and he's watching TV and the dog's in his lap. Gets the knock at the door. Dog goes crazy. Dog goes nuts. Well, why does that dog go crazy? Because he's startled, right? He's out of his comfort zone. I mean, here he was probably laying down either watching TV or asleep, as most dogs do. And all of a sudden, you knock on the door or somebody else, and he's like, whoa, starts yipping. And, of course, Randy loses his peace. And anybody else that's had a dog in their lap when you're asleep, and that dog does that. Because even though you didn't hear that knock at the door, sometimes that dog's going to hear it. I've been there before. It's kind of like you're over there asleep, and your dog freaks out, and you're looking around like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden you say, after the third knock, oh, somebody's at the door. Okay, that's what you're trying to tell me, Lassie, whatever. And the other thing that's real funny, and I just had to share this with you. I'm sure a couple of y'all have seen this. We used to have a bulldog, and I don't know what makes these things do it, but when they do it, it's hilarious. They'll just be sitting there, and you'll be watching TV or whatever, and they'll just take off running. Y'all ever seen them do this? Like they take off running, they're back and running and back. I died laughing at my dog several times because he would do that. And I'm telling you, it's like they get no traction either, It's like they're kind of sliding sideways and trying to get their feet, especially if you got no carpet on the ground. You can forget that. If it's non-carpeted floor, that dog's going everywhere. I actually saw something funny the other day, too. This girl's boyfriend was trying to bowl with her dog, and it was on a slick floor, and he was kind of going back like this and letting the dog go, and the dog kind of goes into the bowl with pins. I thought that was funny, too. That brought to my mind. But anyway, we'll get serious. But pretty much, why does that dog freak out so much? Because it suspects the unknown, right? It gets fearful. It's like, what's going on? There's something that's changed my way here that, I was all comfortable in my comfort zone. I was taking a nap, whatever, and you knocked on the door or whatever you did, or the phone rang, and it just made me go crazy. So it suspects the unknown. Now, over in Numbers 13, 30 through 33. And I'm not gonna read like all this stuff to y'all, but I'm gonna touch on a lot of it. So, so I can get there. It's very hard to mark all these in the Bible tonight. 30 through 33. Okay. And Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it." But the men that went up with him said, "We be not able to go up against the people." Interesting. We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, "The land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people that we saw in it are men of a great stature. And there we saw the giants, the son Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers. And so we were in their sight." And so this is a story, of course, where they're trying to possess the land, and they get scared. The fear comes on them. They sit there and they suspect the unknown. All they do is they see with their eyes, and they get scared. That's our view. A lot of times we see with our eyes and we get scared. Luke 8, 22 through 25. I think I'm going to need one of those page turners tonight. Yeah, well, you remember how that worked last time, so I'm doing it this way. No offense, crew up top. Okay, yeah, 8:22 through 25. So it says, Now it came to pass on a certain day that he went into a ship with his disciples. And he said unto them, Let us go over onto the other side of the lake. And they launched forth. But as they sailed, he fell asleep. And there came down a great storm of wind on the lake. And they were filled with water and were in jeopardy. And they came to him and woke him, saying, Master, Master, we perish. Then he arose and rebuked the wind and the raging of the water, and they ceased, and there was a calm. And he said unto them, Where is your faith? And they, being afraid, wondered, saying one to another, What manner of man is this? For he commandeth even the winds and the water, and they obey him. I don't remember where I saw this, but I thought it was very good. It says, Jesus had no fear at that point. It says the boat didn't look anything like the cross. Matthew 14:24 through 32. But he answered and said, I am not sent, but unto the lost sheep of the house. Whoa, wrong verse. Oh, but that's not it. Yep. 14, not 16. 24, 32. I was like, what am I reading? I remember that during my study. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit. And they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer. It is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thy will, bid me come unto thee on the water. And he said, Come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when they come into the ship, the wind ceased. So in 29, you got Peter walking on the water. So that's important that you realize that. Matthew 10:28. I'll piece all this together here in just a minute, I promise. I just want to show all these different examples that I found, and I'm sure there are many more too. It's kind of like I was talking to y'all about the big picture a little bit, which I thought was awesome that John made reference to too. But let's see. Matthew 10:28. And fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Well, now comes the book. Why is fear so destructive? Got something I want to kind of read to you here. Hundreds of times in Scripture we are instructed not to fear and not to be afraid. At the same time we are told to fear the Lord. The same Hebrew and Greek words are used to describe both the fear that we should not have toward man and the fear that we must have of the Lord. The primary Hebrew word used for fear is yer. It means to revere, to frighten, to make afraid, and to be dreadful. The Greek word for fear is phobio, which means to be alarmed, to be frightened, to be in awe of, and to revere. Fear is extremely important because we worship what we fear. If we fear man, we will worship man and be intimidated by him. If we fear our children, we will worship them and they will control us. But if we fear God, we will worship him and give him his proper honor and reverence. Point 2. Greater things come from great storms. Go back to Luke 8. The other way, sorry. This is where it's going to start tying together. Luke 8, 27 through 35. And you see, now 6 is when they had pretty much done, let's see, where was it at here? Yeah, the ceased and there was a calm. So I'm kind of picking up from that point. So 27. And when he went forth to the land, there met him out of the city a certain man who had devils a long time, and wear no clothes, neither abode in any house, but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell down before him, and with a loud voice said, What have I to do with thee? Jesus, thou Son of God Most High, I beseech thee, torment me not. For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For oftentimes it had been caught him, and he was kept bound with chains and in fetters. And he brake the bands and was driven of the devil into the wilderness. And Jesus asked him, saying, What is thy name? And he said, Legion, because many devils were entered into him. And they besought him that he would not command them to go out into the deep. And there was there a herd of many swine feeding on the mountain. And they besought him that he would suffer them to enter into them. And he suffered them. Then went the devils out of the man and entered into the swine. And the herd ran violently down a steep place into the lake, and were choked. When they that fed them saw what was done, they fled, and went and told it in the city and in the country. Then they went out to see what was done, and came to Jesus and found the man, out of whom the devils were departed, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. So, what I'm seeing here is, and this is what we're going to kind of build off of, is you've got the story of the boat filling with water, and them being afraid. And then through that storm that they experienced there, then they were able to go and deliver a man from a legion of demons. So it was a greater thing that took place after that. Matthew 14, 6 through 21. But when Herod's birthday was kept, the daughter of Herodias danced before them and preached. I'm sorry? Okay, that'll work too. Herodias danced before them and pleased Herod. Whereupon he promised with an oath to give her whatsoever she would ask. And she, being before instructed of her mother, said, Give me here John the Baptist's head in a charger. And the king was sorry, nevertheless for the oath's sake, and them which sat with him at meat, he commanded it to be given to her. And he sent and beheaded John in the prison. And his head was brought in a charger and given to the damsel, and she brought it to her mother. When Jesus heard of it, this is in 13, he departed thence by ship into a desert place apart. And when the people had heard thereof, they followed him on foot out of the cities. And Jesus went forth and saw a great multitude, and was moved with compassion toward them, and healed their sick. And when it was evening, his disciples came to him, saying, This is a desert place, and the time is now past. Send the multitude away, that they may go into the villages and buy themselves victuals. But Jesus said unto them, They need not depart, give ye them to eat. And they say unto him, We have here but 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He said, Bring them hither to me. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and took the 5 loaves. And long story short, 21. And they had eaten were about 5,000 men, beside women and children. So it was 5,000 plus that he pretty much fed there. So you got John the Baptist's heads beheaded, and then he goes and feeds 5,000 plus people. So there's another miracle. Point 3. If all that we are and have is truly dedicated to God, we have nothing to fear because we have nothing to lose. So not only were there these different stories right here beside each other, there was another story that starts in John 13. And that was the Last Supper. And y'all know the story of the Last Supper. But in John 16:33, he says, "These things I have spoken unto you, that in me you might have peace. In the world you shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world." So he talks to him about peace again. Okay, then over in 18, as you see, that's right across from the Lord's Supper, 13. He talks to him about peace. Goes into 18:10. Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and smote the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. 11. Then Jesus said unto Peter, "Put up the sword into the sheath. The cup which my Father hath given me, shall I not drink it?" So there again, y'all, that's our view versus Jesus' view. Just like in the boat. Our views are totally different of the situations a lot of times. And then in Luke 23:46, you have the cross. It says, "And when Jesus had cried in a loud voice, he said, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. And having said thus, he gave up the ghost." But then in Luke 24:1-6, it says, "Now upon the first day of the week, very early in the morning, they came unto the Yeah, I didn't know what that word was. Everybody says it great. Bringing the spices which they had prepared, and certain others with them. And they found the stone rolled away from that thing. And they entered in and found not the body of the Lord Jesus. And it came to pass, and they were much perplexed thereabout. Behold, 2 men stood by them in shining garments. And as they were afraid, and bowed down their faces to the earth, they said unto them, Why seek ye the living among the dead? He is not here, but is risen. Remember how he spake unto you when he was yet in Galilee." So to me, that's just another example of where there was a storm. But then greater things came from great storms. But keep in mind that you've got to have that peace in there the whole time. Because think of how much, in these it was just like chapters away from each other. But if you think about in your life a lot how we get nervous and sidetracked and go off in our own little wildernesses, it's very interesting how that, we get to where we would lose focus is what I'm trying to say, and it may not be as close in our chapters. Because we would be distracted. And so because Jesus had that peace, and he was able to overcome that fear, that's how he was able to just one right after the other. Go from one battle to the next, one miracle to the next. I mean, because you see right there, I mean, he had sorrow. I mean, there were several places in what I share with you that he was struggling inside. But yet, he just kept talking about how peace he's going to leave with them. And how peace is so important. And so I just encourage you this week to go through your Bible and, I mean, just look at that stuff. Just look in there for that big picture that I talked about. Look in there to see how all this stuff comes into place one right after the other. Because I'm telling you, Jesus said that he wanted us to do greater things than he did. And if we see how he moved one right after the other, you don't see that Jesus did all this and then all of a sudden he was over here and got caught up in this sin. That doesn't happen. Because he was sinless. He was a spotless lamb. And we do have to work on it. A lot. Have to work hard at it. But if we could just get to the point to where we could get to that one right after the other miracle, I think it would be so much easier for us to walk than feel like we're crawling all the time. That's all I have. God bless y'all.